Why didn't machine gunners during World War II need to aim at the enemy? They only had to point their guns into the sky and fire. These aren't just cinematic effects. This was actually a real and effective tactic. This approach is called beyond shooting technique. Since bullets travel in a parabolic arc, commanders would calculate the firing angle in advance, and the soldiers would fire into the sky all at once. The bullets could then fly over obstacles or friendly troops and strike the enemy. This method was very effective on the battlefield. If many machine gunners fired in the same direction, even if the enemy was hiding in a trench, they would still be hit. However, this tactic is now outdated because it required large amounts of ammunition and machine guns. Today we have advanced mortars. Why did soldiers in World War II use bombs without gunpowder? These are not just special effects in movies. In fact, they represent some of the most realistic footage in history. They're called lazy dog bombs. The bombs don't contain any gunpowder, so they don't explode. Instead, these bombs kill enemies using gravity. Inside one large bomb, there are 17,000 lazy dog bombs. The bomb's destructive power can spread over 10 square kilometers. It has 4 tail fins, which allows it to reach a falling speed of 700 kilometers per hour. Made of steel, it can easily penetrate a 60-millimeter thick steel plate. Because of its small size, it has excellent concealment. And by the time you notice it, the bomb is already above your head. Due to the very low production cost of this explosive, the number of bombs produced is extremely high. The large number of bombs dropped results in massive destructive power. Since it only relies on free fall to kill enemies, many soldiers were killed by being struck. Because there is no explosion sound nearby, their comrades had no idea what was happening around them. However, no one uses this weapon anymore because we now have advanced intercontinental missiles. The method of using gravity to kill enemies is no longer practical. Why World War II soldiers couldn't salute their officers, or they'd get them officers killed.
Morning, sir!
Oh, get your hands down. Do not salute.
This seemingly small action saved countless lives. These aren't just cinematic effects. This was actually a real and effective tactic. Snipers during World War II specifically targeted soldiers with the highest ranks. To avoid detection, soldiers would fold down their collars to conceal their rank insignia from the enemy. For officers, the battlefield posed an even greater danger. They dreaded salutes from their comrades because such gestures could instantly expose their rank to enemy snipers. Since you could never be sure if a sniper was nearby, saluting on the battlefield could make you an easy target. To counter this, officers would quickly return the salute, making it harder for snipers to identify who held the higher rank. Snipers rarely fired randomly. Their targets were carefully chosen. Certain actions could draw their attention. Why would World War II soldiers discard their M16 rifles and pick up enemy AK-47? This isn't just a cinematic trope. It's a reflection of reality. During the Vietnam War, the M16 rifle was notorious for its high failure rate. Soldiers frequently experienced jamming issues during use. Early models of the M16 had barrels and chambers that were highly prone to corrosion, and the gunpowder residue from its ammunition was excessive. This design choice was meant to reduce production costs. Manufacturers even promoted the rifle as maintenance-free, so it came without cleaning tools. As a result, soldiers couldn't repair or maintain malfunctioning rifles in the field, making them prefer the enemy's more reliable AK-47. However, picking up enemy weapons was a risky move. Many soldiers relied on the distinct sound of gunfire to identify enemy positions. Using an enemy weapon on the battlefield could lead to friendly fire incidents, as your comrades might mistake you for the enemy. Additionally, since the ammunition used by both sides was incompatible, the bullets a soldier carried might not work with the new rifle, reducing their combat effectiveness. This practice wasn't without dangers either. During World War II, German soldiers sometimes placed landmines under discarded weapons to trap enemies tempted to pick them up. But if you're on the battlefield, your gun malfunctions, and the enemy is closing in, grabbing any weapon you can find to fight back might just be your only option. Why were there no medics on the battlefield during World War II? This is not just a cinematic effect. It was actually a reflection of the harsh reality. Firstly, the Geneva Conventions prohibit the killing of medics on the battlefield. This is considered a grave war crime. No matter what nationality, wounded soldiers are supposed to receive treatment and care. However, during World War II, Japanese soldiers blatantly disregarded this rule. They specifically targeted medics as their top priority for elimination, which left many enemy soldiers unable to be saved. To avoid being targeted, medics on the front lines would remove their helmets and armbands. This was done to prevent being easily identified by the enemy. The cultural mindset of Japanese soldiers led them to view the killing of medics as acceptable, since resources were extremely scarce in Japan. They would not treat wounded soldiers. Japanese soldiers would not allow such a waste of resources to occur. When Japanese soldiers were injured, they often chose to die alongside their enemies rather than risk becoming a burden. Thus, during World War II, medics had to hide their identities. You would rarely, if ever, see medics on the battlefield. Why could World War II soldiers lift a tank with their bare hands? The British military extensively used decoy weapons to mislead enemy forces. As part of Operation Fortitude, the British devised a clever deception plan. They placed inflatable tanks along the British coast, leading the Germans to believe that large-scale troop deployments were underway. To further confuse the German forces, British soldiers used aircraft to drop strips of metal, tricking German radar systems into detecting what seemed like real tanks in massive numbers. Additionally, over 200 dummy parachutists were airdropped. These dummies were actually cloth puppets filled with explosives. Upon landing, their parachutes would ignite, creating the illusion of numerous enemy troops infiltrating German-held territory. These deceptive tactics caused German commanders to make critical strategic errors, often costing them battles. Inflatable equipment like these played a crucial role on the battlefield. Nowadays, soldiers rely on far more advanced technology, leaving behind such rudimentary deception strategies.
Why did missiles during World War II make a whistling sound? What I mean is, the terrifying sounds in movies are not just post-production effects, they were actually present on the battlefield. The whistling sound wasn't caused by the missile cutting through the air. It was because there was actually a whistle installed on the missile. This was a psychological tactic devised by the Germans. This tactic was aimed at disrupting the enemy's strategies. The terrifying sound caused panic among soldiers. The Germans also used psychological warfare in their aircraft. When their planes dove to drop bombs, they emitted a terrifying screech. The Germans installed devices on the wings of the planes. These wind-powered devices generated sounds that made enemy soldiers lose the will to resist. Can a guy use a helmet to cover a grenade to withstand the blast damage? In reality, someone has actually tried it. During the Iraq War, a soldier named Durham covered an impending grenade explosion with his helmet. He even pressed his body down on top of the helmet. Durham was unfortunately killed in the explosion, and his helmet was shattered to pieces. Even if the guy managed to shield himself from the shrapnel with the helmet, the shockwave from the grenade would still cause serious injuries to his body. So, if you discover a grenade about to explode nearby, you should definitely find a crater or cover and lie down. Don't try to use a helmet to cover a grenade or throw it back with your hands, unless you're Captain America.
Get away!
Why were missiles during World War II filled with large amounts of toilet paper instead of explosives? These missiles caused many enemy soldiers to surrender. This wasn't just a cinematic effect, it was actually one of the most real scenes from that time. This was a very famous psychological tactic during World War II. German soldiers filled missiles with leaflets encouraging surrender. They used missiles to send these leaflets to America and Britain. The content of these leaflets made it hard for soldiers to focus on fighting. That's why the content of these leaflets was so important. Enemy soldiers, pressured by public opinion, were more likely to surrender or run away. This saved a lot of ammunition resources. Before the atomic bomb exploded in Hiroshima, soldiers flew bombers over Japan and dropped 5 million leaflets. The leaflets clearly explained the power of the atomic bomb, but Japanese soldiers thought we were just bragging. They didn't believe we had such a powerful weapon. Later, when the atomic bomb exploded, the Japanese soldiers had no chance to regret it. Why were soldiers able to shoot down fighter planes with rifles during World War II? These are not just movie effects. In fact, this is one of the most realistic scenes from history because this was part of the training program for soldiers during World War II. They had to use rifles to shoot at planes flying in the sky. Officers believed this method could effectively boost morale. We know that the fighter planes at that time flew at low altitudes. The planes didn't have missile systems. They only had heavy machine guns. Pilots had to fly close to the ground to attack their targets. On the ground, soldiers could use rifles to retaliate. This was possible because the aircraft during World War II were made with light aluminum alloy shells, which were very fragile. Soldiers could penetrate the plane's exterior with rifle bullets, causing damage to the engine and potentially leading to a crash. However, we cannot accurately track how many planes were shot down by rifles because the battlefield during World War II was extremely chaotic. There were many reasons a plane could crash. It's impossible to tell which planes crashed because they were hit by bullets. But today, such a situation is impossible. This is because bombers have now entered the battlefield. Soldiers cannot shoot at them from long distances with rifles. Also, we've strengthened the armor on modern aircraft. The A-10 Warthog's cockpit is protected by 50 millimeters of titanium armor. It even has 2 engines. A soldier's rifle could never harm it.
Why do soldiers need to tap their helmets every time they use a rifle magazine? This isn't just a cinematic effect in war dramas. It's one of the most realistic actions in real life. This behavior can save soldiers' lives. Most rifle magazines are curved, which can cause bullets to misalign easily. If soldiers use a rifle in this state, it can result in a jam. That's why soldiers perform the action scene at the beginning of the video. By tapping the magazine against their helmet, they can prevent bullets from getting stuck. It also helps to clear sand or dust from the magazine. The M16 rifle is particularly prone to this issue because its early models used aluminum magazines, which often malfunctioned and endangered soldiers' lives. As a result, soldiers have become accustomed to this behavior.